things. Either there's been an increase in the level of competitiveness within that market, or it's a market that's going through a period of hypergrowth. And I'd say when it comes to franchising, both of those things are true.
Right, so today one trend I'd really want to talk about is, say, over the past 6 months to a year, we've began working with like a massive surge in franchise brands. So what do you think is driving that?
Well, usually in any vertical industry, when we see a large increase in the number of customers approaching us, it usually suggests one of two things. Either there's been an increase in the level of competitiveness within that market, or it's a market that's going through a period of hypergrowth. And I'd say when it comes to franchising, both of those things are true at the moment. And I would say a lot of that growth is being driven by more niche franchising brands, especially in the fitness and food and beverage space.
Okay. So when you say niche, we've seen, firsthand these franchise concepts. They're very interesting. They're new. Can you explain a bit more about why you think they're becoming more niche and more specialised?
Okay, so I think when we talk about niche, maybe let's look at fitness, for example. I think fitness would be a good example. Okay, so there's been fitness franchises operating for a very long time, but traditionally the traditional gym would be the one size fits all. It would be the big mega gym, your David Lloyd type places, where you would have a swimming pool, there'd be a weights area, there'd be a yoga room, they'd do spin classes.
Yeah, everything under one.
Everything in one. So you could think of it as a Swiss Army knife or a jack of all trades. These places tend to be in purpose-built locations, and we're talking millions and millions of pounds or dollars in order to set up these facilities. Usually the franchisee will be an institutional level investor, or it will be a business or a holding company that owns many franchises under it. The big trend we're seeing at the moment are more focused franchise offerings. So in fitness, for example, what we're seeing franchise brands that offer smaller locations and focus on one very specific thing. So it might be for example, like hot yoga or spin classes or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Okay, so rather than being a one-size-fits-all, they're specializing. And they tend to be moving into smaller spaces and smaller areas.
I've noticed, I was reading the news today, Amazon's online sales for this Christmas, they raised 20%. People seem to be buying, all of their necessities online now and only going out for these experiences, which franchising seems to be, it relates to that surge in the number of franchise brands that we're seeing, especially with these niche offerings. How does that affect the mapping side?
Well, the mapping side, I think the revolution in retail is connected to what we're seeing in franchising.
Yeah.
I think what's happened is, retail's moved online now.
Yeah. And
what that's done is that's seen a lot of traditional high street brands go out of business or have to reinvent themselves, and that's happening at the shopping mall level, the high street level, retail park level. And as we'll always see with supply and demand dynamics, when there's reduced demand, the price per square foot or square meter of retail space is decreased, and that opens up the potential for more innovative business models that can utilize that space. And I think franchise brands, fitness again, have particularly been utilizing that reduction in space. So the main thing we're seeing on the mapping front, like I said, is a reduction in the size of territories.
Yeah.
Okay, so most franchisors, instead of having, say, a city where if it was a David Lloyd gym, there would be only one in a large town. Or if it was a bigger city, maybe there would be two. What we're seeing with, say, for example, fitness franchises, is they may divide a city up into 20 or 30 territories with lots and lots of small locations. So that means for a franchisor, they need to approach mapping in a very different way. I think mapping's now more to do with sales. So I think traditionally, a franchisor would look at mapping as an administration task. It's something we do in the beginning. We decide on what the territory boundaries are, and then we have these back-end maps that we use in-house, so we can see at a glance which territories are sold and which are available. I think what we've seen now is a transition into using digital mapping as a sales tool.
Okay. It's something that I've seen definitely, and it's a really interesting point that I think, if traditionally, how would the territories managed, and how you said that there was a sales tool, and how has that switch been made, would you say?
Well, I think it starts with who the customer is. Okay, so the purchaser of the franchise territory. When they were these bigger franchise territories that involved investments that were in the millions, it would tend to be holding companies who were moving in. And those type of companies are relatively sophisticated and have their own business intelligence tools that they can use to make informed decisions. But when we're moving into these smaller territory areas, we're seeing an increasing trend where the buyer of the franchise territory is an individual. Now, for an individual, this may be the single biggest financial decision of their life. So obviously, when you're making a decision of that size, you want to make an informed decision. And I think some of the franchise brands have cottoned onto this. You know, they're all looking for that unique differentiator in order to make more sales. You know, the kind of poster boy in fitness would be, say, F45. F45, who are a Mango customer, they've sold over 2,000 territories, I believe, in the last 5 years, which is just mind-blowing.
Yeah.
And what they've realised is that mapping isn't just an administration tool. It's a sales tool. It's a tool that we can use to empower potential buyers to make informed decisions. So traditionally, if I was going to buy a franchise territory, the most common practice was to give a prospectus for the territory, which would be a small PDF document with a few snippets of information such as population about that territory. But the guys that are really seeing the hyper growth at the moment, they're giving a fully featured map-based content management system to their users. And we've seen for our own analytics that the buyers of territories are spending dozens of hours inside this system, as you would expect when you're making a decision of this size.
Particularly if it's like an individual doing that.
Oh yeah, definitely. This is who I'm talking about here, the individual.
Yeah.
So they'll be drilling down into that demographic data because these systems have all the information in there. We have population density. We can look at what the median household income is. We can see what the average age is inside those households, how many children they have. So most of the franchise brands and the person who's purchasing from that franchise brand will know who their target demographic is.
Yeah.
So the person can make it, when they're choosing the territories from the ones that are available, can make a much more informed decision. Now for me, if I was making that decision, one of the biggest financial decisions of my life, and say, I've been looking into multiple brands. I'd narrowed it down to a few that were aligned with my own personal goals and what I was hoping to achieve with the franchise brand and fit with me as a person. And then it comes down to small details about which one I'm going to choose. So if I narrowed it down to two and I can't decide between the two, if one of the franchise brands has handed me a few printed out PDFs in order to choose my territory, the other ones handed me a really powerful interactive content management system where I can drill down into data, I'm going to feel more comfortable with buying from this brand because I feel that I have more data at my disposal and I'm not just trusting the word of the salesperson who's dealing with it.
Yeah, definitely. One thing that I've noticed is once these brands are able to deploy, say, this content management system, this web mapping system, and have all of the data in there, they can then just focus on their core capabilities, which is refining their concept, selling more territories. Is that something that you've noticed as well?
Well, definitely. I think this is one of the reasons why Mango's been so popular with franchise brands. All companies, they want to focus on their core competencies. Mm-hmm. Okay, so if I'm a franchising business, it's about my brand. It's about my franchising brand, and then secondary to that is sales and marketing. Okay, that's where I want to put all of my effort in. Mm-hmm. I don't want people distracted, with the intricacies of drawing territories. I want somebody to help me with that. And I think where Mango really excels is we're a very simple tool. So if you do have some in-house technical capacity, you can easily configure Mango on your own and set up your own system. But what a lot of our clients choose to do, and a service that we offer through our professional services, is have us configure everything for you. We'll design the territory plan, we'll build the mapping system and add all of the correct tools to it. And we don't just build the system and then hand it over. This can be an ongoing relationship where we can help with updates as you expand. One of the big challenges a lot of franchising firms have is when they go multinational. Okay, so they begin at a national level and then they have that expansion. That's often a challenging period, especially when it comes to decisions about territories in physical locations that they might not be familiar with.
Yeah.
Well, definitely. I mean, it's been a big trend over the past year or so. I think it's going to continue like that this year. So yeah, it's really interesting to go through that with you. So yeah, thanks for chatting today, and thanks for watching.